You're watching ASOTUCon 2024, presented in collaboration with Reynolds and Gubagoo.
Thanks to our studio partner, Automotive Mastermind, and our panel partner, Constellation, for making this panel happen.
I don't know if you know this, but ASOTU's a big content crew. And so anytime we're talking with the word content in it, I get excited. So I've got a few friends up here, new friends, old friends, and everything in between. I'll tell you this. Watch out for Diana, because I had her on a podcast and I was like, oh, Diana, meek and mild. And then that did not happen. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, my CMO was like, we're not airing this. I guess I said way too much.
Oh, it was so good. So Diana Lee and, founder and CEO, you go by, of Constellation and a tech agency, everything in between. I'm excited to hear from you. Melissa, Senior Director of Digital Marketing at AutoNation, and then Anthony Barone, and you gave me a title that I told you I wasn't going to remember, and I didn't remember it. Uh-oh. Are you on? Flick it up.
Are we on?
There we go.
Strategic Development Manager, Automotive Mastermind, East Region.
East Region. I like it. Look at that. Let's give it up for these people for, giving us their time. I'll remind you now, so I don't have to remind you in a second. About 10 minutes to go, I'll open up my app. Don't worry, I'm not texting my best friend about the soccer game that he's going to go tonight, that he wants the tickets, even though that text is in my thread. What I'll be doing is checking the app to see if there's any Q&A that you guys have, and we'll make sure and lean in and ask this fine crew at the end if you have any questions. But today we're talking about how do we deliver relevant content, the content that the person wants, to the right audience. The core thesis of this conversation is that, actually last night, I'll tell a little story. I was at dinner with a gentleman that I don't think is in here, but I was at dinner and it was telling me about one of the very first commercials ever that got ran in auto. It was basically one of those like afternoon shows where they pull, I don't know if you remember, like they pull the car past and then explain the car and then the next one goes. And has anybody ever seen one of those commercials? Wow. Is everybody here under 30 years old? Is that what that is? You never seen like the Saturday commercial where like they pull the car in and then they go through and it's like, look at this one for under $9,000, all that type of stuff. So we've come from that all the way to this digital age, and yet at some level, we are still delivering some version of that ad to everybody that ever sees anything about our brand, whether it's relevant or not. So we want to talk through how to get over that and what the better way is. Diana, I'm going to start with you. You came out of the dealership life and you saw an opportunity to serve dealers in a way that said, okay, as an agency, I want to deliver something that dealers haven't thought about before. And you've actually implemented it from all the way from tier 1 to tier 3. Talk a little bit about what you saw. What was the problem and why branch out to do the thing that you needed to do in line with our topic today?
Yeah, Kyle. So I started, hello, Brian. I can't believe you're not up here and I'm not sitting there. Sorry. But what happened was I sold cars when I was 18 years old, and I was in the automotive side for close to 12, 15 years in retail automotive, selling cars and F&I manager, sales manager. And then I did automotive consulting for the 15 years after that before launching Constellation. So at first, I thought this is a digital media agency for the automotive industry. And this is what happened. I went on the road door to door to you. And they said, I want to do it in Spanish. I want to do it in different languages. I want to do it based on the demographics of the people that live here. I have offer iterations and inventory iterations, and I need to do it based on the laws for social, website, landing pages, e-blast, Twitter, Pinterest, and Snapchat, and every other channel.
Zero complexity whatsoever.
Exactly. And you have to syndicate it all within 30 days and get it all down, because offer iterations have to come down based on inventory on the same month. It takes an average of every dealer, I don't care who you are, 7 to 14 days to do all of that. It cannot be done. Humanly cannot be done. I had artists that said, I didn't go to Pratt and Parsons and the best art schools of the world to do your banner advertising and advertise $2.99. I had campaign managers on my team that said, I quit. And I said, why? Why would you quit? This is a great job. They said, I did not go to college to do monkey work all day. It wasn't humanly possible. Nobody wanted the job. I went to India to try to get Indians to do it. And they said, you know what? It's cheap labor, but we still make the same mistakes as the Americans. And so every single time, it didn't work because humans cannot QC that amount of work. You can't make all the offer iterations that's been specific by every dealer, getting up your website, landing pages, e-blast, social pages, and all those channels and get it down and be 100% correct. Can't do it.
So we got a problem. That sounds like a big problem. I forgot about Pinterest, just to be honest with you, okay? So, as at AutoNation, obviously, like you have that problem exacerbated times hundreds at this point when we're talking about, yes, the desire is that person gets the right ad at the right time with the right creative to entice them to do business at the right dealership. Right. Like, how are you solving that at scale right now? And what things do you commit to? And what things do you just kind of say, we're just not there yet?
So we're working through some of we're not there yet now, and that's more on the video side. But we deploy we deploy at scale. We utilize automation. We utilize inventory feeds, and we have a couple of different platforms that we connect with to make all of that happen for us to do it at scale. But it was a long haul to get there, and it's actually working much better today than it was like 8 years ago because now we're deploying based on first-party data. So we're activating in that manner, and we're utilizing identity resolution and all of the things that you should be doing to make sure you tap into your audience. But on the video side, it's super problematic because you still have the same problem, right? You want to get the offer out, you have limited time to do it, and you have 1,000 videos or more to run across all of these different stores. You've got the rules and regulations from the brands, you have the laws that you have to abide by, so you have to build that out, and you have to do it in a framework that will work. But honestly, the other day, I noticed all of the QA process that was happening, and I was like, this is not what we signed up for. So I actually have to reevaluate that now, because on the display side for programmatic, that works okay. That's fairly easy. It's templated. It's not that difficult, even though the message is not very sexy. But it's what people are looking for. They want to see the car. But on the video side, to do that in a dynamic fashion, similarly to what you would do with display, is extremely difficult.
So we have a problem.
We have a big problem.
I think you got the solution guy here on the panel.
Give me the solution, Anthony, please. Like, where do we go? Like, what's the way to make sure that we have the right content in front of the right person all the time?
So
Maybe you don't have all the
From a mastermind perspective, we're not a panacea, right? Can't solve all the problems, but we have found there's great applications with dealer groups, with large scale organizations to make their data actionable, to create an environment that is a single source of truth, so that when you go to activate, when you go to do these complex activations, you're confident that you don't have waste in there, that you're not double communicating to the same household, that you're talking to the person you think you're talking to. Some of the identity resolution I saw in some of the other panels is a part of that. But I think what we found with the dealer groups and the dealers that we're working with is there is this huge focus on, hey, my CRM is not the source of truth. My DMS is not the source of truth. There's all these kind of buzzy CDP, all these companies that are kind of emerging. But how can I transform my data into an actionable format? Basically. And at Mastermind, that's what we've really doubled down and focused on, is creating that single source of truth, creating that platform that you can confidently then build these automations on top of. We've designed some of this stuff as well, but really becomes a data enablement platform at that point for a lot of this stuff.
But I would argue that the content looks all the same.
Sea
and
of sameness.
Can't
Sea
do
of
it.
sameness.
You can't do it. Because then you don't represent yourself. You represent the vendor. And so that doesn't work for dealers. So that's the first problem, is you got to represent each dealership, individualize them, even though it's connected to the OEMs. And that is the piece that we are looking to solve.
Yes.
Personalization, right?
Yeah.
Of content.
Yeah, I'll go back to the real punchline for the thing that I had the conversation with last night is I've seen the same commercial where they drive the car up, the dealer principal is like, look at this under $8,000, blah, 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 blah. I've seen that within the last year. That's a reality still in our industry. Now, it's not maybe that bad, but I've still seen the display ad that looks, just honestly like crap, right?
Yeah,
it's
same
just
as everybody else.
bad. It just looks the same as everybody else. When we think about the right audience, because these are people that are experiencing an ad, I always go back to, I have a Remarkable in front of me. Has anybody bought a Remarkable or has a Remarkable?
I have.
Do you remember the purchase experience before that or the ad experience before that? I don't know if you remember it. If you didn't just get referred it and go first time to it, they are freaking unbelievable when it comes to delivering the right content to the right audience. I just encourage you, go into Google, search Remarkable and hit their website and then wait for 8 days. You'll understand what I mean. It will be nuts. You'll be on Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards, and you'll start to understand what a content to the right audience and differentiated content actually looks like, right?
That's what we developed, right? So, but we did it auto specifically. There's so much companies out there and technology out there. They do it for broad advertising. And Gen AI is a huge word right now. You don't need photography anymore. You can use Gen AI. It will produce videos. Sora produces videos now. And we even have technology that does background imaging of all Gen AI. You don't need photography anymore. The thing that I came across is the brand guidelines of every OEM is different. But you also have the guidelines of each dealer group and dealer that's also different. That's also differentiated by all of the different disclosures across the country. So we produce a technology that's auto-driven that does all of those things. You could use Adobe. Adobe has Gen AI. So does Salesforce. They can make content. But are you really going to go into your DMS and find the inventory, then figure out the offer, then you're going to actually make the asset? You're not going to do that. You need it all in the same place. Then what? You're going to send it to legal and see what the disclosures are? And so that, if you need it all in the same platform, and that's what we did. We took exactly the needs of auto, put it in the platform, and it's connected to every website. You can have all the offer iterations in a minute now.
So, Melissa, but let's say we have all of the data, right, in the right place, and we have all of the content that we can possibly dream up that we want, right? Both of those things are extremely automated. Where does the decision making come in when we think about the right audience for the right content at the right time? How are you making conscious decisions as an automotive dealership or dealer group right now? And what questions should you be asking to make sure you're not segmenting out the wrong thing or not including the right thing, right?
Well, at some point, we had to just put trust into the people that we were working with and the technology that they had, to be honest. We're working with this technology that has AI built into it. There's, machine learning is part of the process, so it determines who's in market, who's not, so we can have an ad put in front of a person at the right time, and it pulls in the information that it needs from all of our feeds so that it's in real time. It's built in seconds, literally. But I think that for the most part, I know that we had to put trust into our agency to get there, and the proof was in the numbers. So once we started to see the numbers come out in terms of the efficiencies that we were finding, and in some instances, our display advertising was cheaper from an influence perspective than it was to buy search. When we saw that in the numbers, then we said, okay, we can lean in more. But I do think that there's two different concepts of content that you have to think about when you're advertising, right? There's your brand that you have to think about. That's your store. Most dealers will, and I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard in other sessions that I've been in, dealers are like, the OEM should own the brand, but then you have a store and you really should own your store as that brand for that area. So there's that, and then there's the actual inventory marketing, right? So I think you have to decide what type of content you want for your brand and what type of content you want to run for your inventory. The inventory is harder, right? Because that you have to do at scale. You have to have automation. How sexy can you make that? It's hard. But on the brand side, you have options that you could investigate on. Just think about video in general. Years ago, Pepsi did this great commercial where they had the can of soda. It was 0 sugar, 0 commitment. I don't know if anybody remembers that commercial. But they tailored it to 70 different audiences and 70 different messages within that ad, depending on the audience that was getting it. Could have been a mom that was, getting the message. It could have been somebody that enjoyed sports that got the message. And it was different every time, but there was still only one asset. It was that can of soda, 0 sugar, 0 commitment. And I thought that was cool. So we tested it out ourselves. And we did it with our used car stores. And we got one base video, and we changed the content associated. We didn't do it for 70, but we did it for a few. We just wanted to test it out. And
when you say change the content, like
yes,
what? Because you said same broad message, but what?
We geared the message towards like a movie theater enthusiast. Like it might have been something like, you want to, it had something to do with the movies. If I had the verbiage, I should have wrote it down and said what it was. But it was something specific to somebody that enjoyed going to the movies. Something specific to someone that enjoyed going to baseball games, or something specific to someone that was a car enthusiast. We had several different ones. And what we found was after we deployed it, we saw an 1,800% lift in our search traffic.
Good night.
1,800%.
That's kind of ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. That's the search lift we saw. So there's value in that.
That's amazing. When you think about Anthony, because getting down to like a lot of one-to-one messaging, which is what you guys are focused on, it's a lot less. Like we can do one-to-one from like a display or a programmatic perspective, especially the session that I was just in before when you're resolving identities. But when you're doing one-to-one messaging in traditional media or even like in email media, what does it look like to deploy creative or deploy the right, even just content, like, because we talk about creative and content are somewhat, synonymous, but also very different at the same time. Like, how is that leveraged today, and what should dealers be asking themselves as far as questions?
Yeah, so we're a unique company in the space in terms of doing one-to-one, in terms of doing traditional print, email, et cetera, because philosophically, we have two key goals as an organization that drive from our operational level down. One of them is to have more adoption amongst dealers. Obviously, we want to work with more dealers. The other one is we actually want to send less marketing at a higher conversion rate, which is actually counterintuitive, right? We would make less money if we were successful with that, right? But it's important to us because from a relevance perspective, from an ability to do personalized one-to-one, we want to hold ourselves to that standard to be targeted enough that we can send less marketing for a higher rate of return, for a higher impact for our dealers. And I think on the one-to-one scale, that's what I would encourage dealers to look at. Not to think of their loyalty portfolio as this big holistic thing. I want to retain everybody in a Chevy Blazer, so I'm going to send them an email blast. More about the segments within that. A loyal customer that doesn't service with you, right, is different from a loyal customer that does service with you. Somebody who's in a lease that's expiring in 3 months is different from a person that's in a finance, right, that's negative equity and 4 or 5 years out, right? So what we've really moved towards is being hyper-targeted in these little micro segments that live within a customer portfolio, within a dealer group portfolio. And we found a lot of success where if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago, we're sending 5,000 to 10,000 mail pieces for an individual dealer. We've reduced that to like under 2,000 for a lot of, and for the same rate of return, if not higher in some cases. Yeah. So that's really where I see moving. If you're going to spend on that area, if you're going to do one-to-one, it's really about being super targeted, spending less, but being a lot more effective in the course of doing it.
Diana, when you think about like the spectrum from, I want to target people that like sports to I want to target people that, like the Ohio State Buckeyes, live on 1010 Cherry Tree Lane and have bought 2 Teslas, what's the appropriate amount of content specialization that needs to happen to be effective? Like, when is there a trailing return on efficiency when it comes to the content and the audience?
Yeah, so I think my greatest frustration, because our company specializes in permutations and iterations of content. So resizing and doing content in a minute based on offer and inventory, that's easy now. Automation fixes that situation. But what I get frustrated the most is original content sucks in auto. And I'm going to tell you this, because Brian Benstock is sitting right here. He is a genius in having original content. And, we do business with Paragon, but I will say that what I respect out of Brian and what he's able to do is the original content that he makes is funny. It's hilarious. And he's going after organic content, not even paid, but he has, a viral video that goes 2 million views on an organic level because he cares about it. So I will tell you, I meet with a lot of dealer principals and I meet with a lot of executives. But if you don't care about the content and the originals are bad, you're just making bad permutations of all of that. And then you're hyper segmenting it, but it's bad content to begin with. If you can't differentiate original content, we can't help you.
Yeah, so it's like start there and send it everywhere. And then once you get that right, then go down to
Get that right.
The first thing that you have to think of is being memorable, right?
Yes.
So if you're not memorable, what's the point?
Exactly.
And a lot of times we're taking content that we create for television and we're pushing that into digital. Why are we doing that? I don't understand that. That's a whole different approach, a whole different way to do it. Nissan, when the CMO from Nissan a few years ago had said that one of their strategies was they created video first, small snippet video first, decided which message resonated the most, and then they took it to TV. They flipped it. And I feel like that's what needs to happen today. We need to flip that methodology.
Yeah, I have a couple friends in auto that they start with organic, try everything, right? Like 30 different options, right? And filter that down, go digital, low cost spend, dedicated audience, find the ones that are the most relevant there, that speed up the most, then go to traditional, because then you've tried it on low cost media, and then you go to your high cost media with a proven strategy, right? Yeah, I think that and then you can reverse that back down, because then you take that broad message, which is harder to target specifically, and you reverse that funnel back down to specific content, like you were saying, where you have permutations of that broad stream ad, right? Like that's a how to get to this roadmap that doesn't cost much money. Right?
Yeah, but to your question before about the how much is too much, like when you start really drilling down on all of these specific behaviors, you're just dropping out of scale. Like at that point, you're going to be, so how many people are you going to get? How much are you going to spend on how many people you're going to get from having all of those things in place? Like that has to be tested, obviously, if you have 5 attributes versus 1,000 attributes. But once you're going to get to a point where there's just too many attributes, and then you can't even find anybody. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So.
Yep, exactly. Any questions? I haven't looked in the app in a few. Any questions from the audience right off the bat? Oh, you guys are like stunned or shocked or
it's middle of the
really
afternoon.
bored. Hopefully they're not. Oh yeah,
break is needed.
Everybody, nobody's had enough coffee. Yes. The question was, how quickly can you pivot when specifically like anything culturally or moment by moment or weather or anything like that may demand a new quick market strategy? How can you adjust and deploy that strategy at scale, right? I think that I want both of you to answer because I think they're different types of deployments, right?
So Gen AI allows you to do it immediately within seconds now. And so that's all doable. Background imaging is almost perfect at this point with Gen AI. So there's a lot of videos and it's not perfect. You know, people have 7 fingers on one hand and things like that. But background imaging is perfect at this point.
Did anybody watch the GPT-4o release? Okay, if you haven't watched the GPT-4o release from 2 days ago, you're missing out. Please go watch it, all right? It's ridiculous what they've just done. All right, I'll let you answer the other side.
The way we would approach that is through affinity modeling, through understanding what garage indicators, what household indicators are the most likely audiences for the kind of vehicles that you're talking about, right? And really for us, that's where it starts. You can do hey, would you rather have a better car in the snow ad? But if 50% of the people or 40% of the people that you're sending it to already have a 4-wheel drive pickup in the garage,
car that's good in the snow,
whatever the case may be, you're wasting your money, right? So the way we would approach that through affinity modeling, through understanding garaging makeup, is giving a very targeted audience, whenever you want to deploy something like that, of who your potential 4-wheel drive audience is, or EV audience, or whatever the case may be that you want to tackle, right? You get to the 23rd of the month, you got 10 ID4s looking at you, right? As a Volkswagen, you want to tackle that audience, right? But it's about understanding who the customers for those cars or the likely customers for those vehicles is.
How long does it take you to figure out? So I think to his question, how quickly can you deploy? Could you do that within 24 hours, within 48 hours? Like, because you have to collect the information.
Yep.
And then you have to figure out what kind of content you're going to deploy with. So 24, 48.
So for where Mastermind sits, the way that we handle that is we have designed what we call indexes for all of these kind of audiences, right? So the dealer that we partner with, we create a strategy around what are the important segments. If there's a snowstorm today and you want to deploy something tomorrow, likely that audience is already created. It's just about grabbing that and activating it through whatever endpoint you want to activate it. Appreciate that.
Yes.
He's got a follow-up. Here we go. Yeah, from Seattle, right? It's like gorgeous cliffs and all. Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
That's actually the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I want to honor the time and the time that these people have. I will say, like, from a backgrounding perspective, like, if you have a background and if you have a thing, especially even in video, like that's probably the easiest thing right now. You can task your agency or anyone or multiple technology partners that can do things like that from a video or an imagery creative. If you have questions for these people, make sure come up to them afterwards. They've all, like, everybody that's here that's on a stage has all said, yeah, we're open. Like the reason they're up here is because they're ready to be have conversations with you. And thank you guys for joining us in this session. I feel like we ran up right to the time, and I have more questions, but give them a round of applause and thanks for coming to this session.